We're ready.
Go for it.
All right, here we go.
Contact.
All right, welcome. We are at Virtually Connecting at the Open Educational Conference in Richmond, Virginia for 2016. I'm Susan Adams, coming at you from New Haven, Connecticut as the virtual buddy today, along with a bunch of folks on the virtual side. And we are meeting with Gardner, Campbell, and Amy Collier, who have just both given a keynote. Gardner has yesterday, and Amy also on a session today, just moments ago. And also on site, I believe we have Chuck and Autumn and Sunday and Dan, who thankfully are helping us connect today to the conference. So welcome everyone, and we'll do a couple of quick introductions just for everybody who's in the virtual space to introduce yourself.
I'm Mo Pelsel. I'm in Sherman, Texas at Austin College. Digital pedagogy design. Hey, Amy.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Hey, Mo.
Hey.
Nadine?
Hi guys, I'm Nadine Navonag from the American University in Cairo. I work at the Center for Learning and Teaching there as the online content developer. Very happy to be here. Hey Amy. Hi Gardner, how are you guys?
Hey, good.
Great, and Lindsay? Oh, you're muted, Lindsay. There we go.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, University of Arizona, Tucson, and I work for the Office of Instruction Assessment, which is the CTL there, focusing on instructional tech and online teaching.
Hello.
And Stu?
Hey everyone, it's Stu. I'm in Wollongong, just south of Sydney in Australia at the University of Wollongong. I think I know a couple of you guys, but yeah, it's late here.
Wow,
thanks
thanks for
there, by the way.
Very dark.
Great. And Wendy?
Hi everyone, Wendy Tallio coming to you from Central Australia, slightly earlier than Stu, but still very dark outside. And I'm a learning technologist based here.
Great, thank you, Wendy. And I forgot to mention I'm an instructional designer at Yale University in their Center for Teaching and Learning, just to give a context there. So how did the session go, Amy? Tell us about hugs.
Yeah, so the sessions here are very short, so they go very quickly. So I'm still not quite all together yet, but I guess the point of the session was to talk a little bit about, from two instructional designers' perspectives and then from an administrator's perspective, what could critical instructional design look like on your campus. And so Sean's comment was something to the effect of critical instructional design rejects the notion of best practices around teaching, in the sense that it's kind of like designing best practices for hugs, like that there's not really, the craft and the intuition around teaching are difficult to have best practices for.
That's
I don't
awesome.
know. Anyone else want to talk?
No, I missed that part, so I'm glad I heard a recap of that, because that's, a couple of us walked in late to Amy's session. It was very well attended. There was tons of people there, and everyone was clapping for what Sean said. Yeah. So that's a perfect analogy, I think.
I came in late, so I didn't hear all of Amy's. I didn't hear any of Sean's, so I'm grateful for the recap. But I'll tell you something about Amy's, because she'll be too modest to say this. First of all, superb use of metaphor at the end with a great kind of about locks and bridges that I think was a great caution that our idealism, our dreams, our passions not turn into the next set of barriers to a sense of inclusion and a sense of ongoing inquiry. And as a passionate, idealistic dreamer, I take that to heart, and that gives me the next part I want to say about Amy's, a part of it I heard. Obviously, I heard the best part. I got there just in time. She talked about risk in administration, oh yeah, without going into any details about that, to occupy a thoughtful position, spaces that really do affect an institution's bottom line, whether it's brand or revenue generation, is, it seems to me, one of the highest callings of higher ed, how we distinguish ourselves from other sectors the way any kind of altruistic or philanthropic nonprofit would. and yet it poses tremendous risks for people who are committed to doing that. Tremendous risks, I would say, to start with the metaphor first. You always are inquiring about your own practices, and that doesn't always get you a position of ascendancy in senior leadership meetings, right?
Yes.
So it's like, well, you can't even make up your mind about this. What's the deal? You know, we have a strategic plan and let's do this. The other part of it is that, of course, it does call the institution itself to a position of thoughtfulness and openness and risk-taking. And to advocate that is often to appear to advocate a kind of institutional suicide. And it isn't that, but it is real risk. And if you're advocating real risk in a meeting full of administrators who have become, often for very good reasons, really risk averse, because it's a survival technique, this is a complex thing we're trying to do. But it really does kind of, I mean, it's almost as if you need a trigger warning, I'm going to be thoughtful now. Because as soon as you do that, everybody's like, oh, you know, what am I going to do? I didn't, was there a bullet point, thoughtfulness on the agenda? I don't remember that. I'm exaggerating a little bit for effect, but I think this was one of the things that really Amy had to say, that it is a commitment to openness is a commitment to vulnerability, and that becomes very difficult and essential to negotiate in a leadership context. And it's a hard thing to do.
You're not exaggerating by much.
Yeah. I mean, can I add to this? Because I feel like this is one of the reasons why I mean, can we
Maha, can you mute your mic?
Yeah, already did. Sorry.
Okay. I guess, so one of the reasons why, so Gardner has been instrumental in my development of this kind of view of leadership, because I don't know if you remember, it was 2 Open Eds ago, maybe, in Washington, D.C. We were having a conversation in the lobby of the hotel in Crystal City, I think is where we were. And we were talking a little bit about some of the challenges of leadership in this space. And we were talking about the longevity of, say, a president of an institution and a provost of an institution. And I said, Gardner, what's the longevity of a you or a me at an institution? And you said 3 to 5 years, because
yeah, who knew? don't ever answer Amy's questions because you have written your destiny. I'm just teasing, but it's true.
Well, but what it did for me is it inspired in me a sense of courage, because what I heard from Gardner at that moment was, it's important enough to be willing to take those risks and to be courageous about your leadership, even though that there are times where your institutional context is going to outrightly reject that. And that, at the time, I was in a context that very, my values were very not aligned with the institution where I was, and it gave me a chance to have the courage to say, what do I want that's different, and what kind of organization could I build somewhere else? And that's been helpful.
To that end, Amy, I'm curious, when you found and discovered that it wasn't working for you at a previous institution and you began to look for others, and you found Middlebury, what was it about Middlebury? What was it that is going to be in alignment with me or better fit with what I'm trying to do?
I was drawn to Middlebury for a number of reasons. I'll try to name a few of them. One is that the leadership of the institution was clearly in a place where they were open to this kind of mindset. I'd had many conversations with the provost, who's now my boss, and I just felt drawn to her perspective, her openness to the kinds of conversations that I thought really mattered. Middlebury was about to have a new president, the first female president of the institution coming in. I was inspired by the things I had heard about that, about the president. So I felt like the leadership context of an institution becomes so important in this work. And that became abundantly clear to me at my previous institutions, even, I would say, before Stanford, before other institutions I've had issues, not issues, but I've run into challenges in that realm. And so I'm very excited about the leadership context at Middlebury. And we're going through a planning process right now, strategic planning process right now that I'm very proud of. We're asking tough questions of ourselves, and we're inviting a large part of inviting everyone in our community to be contributors and questioners with us. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, we're actually, our president is leaving our institution, Daniel and I, and so new leadership is coming in, so it's a very tenuous time. Because good things have been happening. We've had support. I would love to sit down and what questions should this person be asked, you know, and I'm thinking that thoughtfulness and love have to kind of be in those questions, like questions that might make a president a little uncomfortable.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah. There's lots of people over there on the virtual side.
Yeah, Gardner, I'd love to also talk a little bit with you and get people an opportunity to ask you some questions if they do have an opportunity to watch your keynote last night. I got to see it on Periscope thanks to Autumn, and loved your foray into the entomology of insight as a way to really talk about open. What a fantastic metaphor you utilized. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or anything that you feel, Gardner, that you got responses of that you want to share as well? Just open up to anyone.
Gardner, Lindsay here. I didn't get a chance to watch a keynote yet. I had to commute to work. Could you give a 2-minute recap for those? Yeah, watch that.
No.
A 3-minute recap.
Bob Dylan figured prominently.
So I'll give you a broad overview of my disposition toward what I was going to say, but not the content, because first of all, I don't think I could remember it all, and second, I don't know. At this point, I'm trying not to think too much about it because I'm trying to process it all. So here was my disposition. It came out of a very deep place in me that also had an unusual amount of darkness. And by an unusual amount of darkness, I mean really dark, because I carry a lot of darkness around. I think it's probably a kind of a healthy thing to do. Your mileage may vary. But the deal was, I began it with that I made, full of clips from various movies with different soundtracks to them. And I did it as a way of trying to explore the darkness without having that be something I was going to say or have to experience in the moment. Because, and this gets back to what Amy talks about with love, and I love the idea that there are no best practices for hugs, because is a moment of reciprocity, and your best practice is to pay attention to the hug, you know. So, and you know, is somebody hugging this way or hugging that way? And I have whole elaborate stories actually about all of that, but never mind. It's too early in the morning, or maybe not early enough. But here's the deal. I started with this movie. It was 6 minutes long, and it was a short keynote opportunity, about 45 minutes. And the movie was 6 minutes long, and so I was like, oh, this needs to be really worth it. And what I ended up trying to do was pile a lot of conflicted ideas and emotions that I couldn't resolve into an expression of complexity that could all experience the way we would experience a song or a movie, without necessarily trying to track every bit of it or hashtag every bit of it, but just as a place to dwell within the darkness and the hope and the complexity and the conflicts and all the rest of it. And I'll tell you, I mean, Robert Frost says, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And I just, he says, I wept buckets and buckets trying to put that together, because I just felt so strongly that part of what to do was share some experience of living inside of all of those conflicts. And not just that they were personal, but I think they're inherent in the messy business of trying to be human with all of these varying legitimate demands, plus the host of illegitimate demands. So that was the beginning of it, and I went from there into an exploration of insight, which I'd been working on for years and had never quite put together. But I thought it would be, I hope that the introduction, the movie that I did at the beginning, would also be this kind of unexplored, unarticulated thing that might blossom after a while and help to put some of that, the conditions for insight out there. So I don't know if that helps at all, Lindsay, but that's part of what I was trying to do.
For those of us who walked in late, is the movie going to be online, or is that just featured in the keynote?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, I was thinking about this as I was trying not to think about it last night, which is, you know, try not to think about it. Now it's really in there. I thought about, you know, putting it up on YouTube, and at least for a few moments before YouTube's robo cops brought it down, because it's got copyrighted music in it and so forth. You know, try to lost some of it, or not to explain it, but to say, here's what this was. You know, here was the moment where Kendrick Lamar came in, and here was the moment where Joni Mitchell was, and here's the moment that, you know, I wanted to finish it with Lush and this beautiful song Undertow, that able to do this, but you know, Mickey Berenier just keeps singing, "Let Me Try to Pull You Free." And I put that with a clip of the chief from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, after having, you know, done this inhumane thing by killing Randall after his lobotomy. And so, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'll probably put it up on YouTube and try to at least point out, you know, here were the clips, and here's, without explaining it, just here's some of what I was thinking about.
I have to say, as someone who has seen Gardner speak many times now and has every opportunity I've heard, it was one of the most moving experiences listening to Gardner, because it was deeply unsettling in a way that wasn't tweetable. Although I did see tweets, but it wasn't tweetable. It wasn't negotiable into a set of emotions or ways of thinking about it. The way it just moved through these different kind of thoughts and pieces. It was super powerful. And high in my brain that happened was, I watched a few years ago the documentary about the basement tapes, the Dylan basement tapes that they turned into a new album with new artists. And they kept revisiting the experiences that Dylan had of going away into this house and kind of just rejecting everything, and what kinds of creativity that led to that were different than the kinds of creativity I had before. And that connection for me happened around the notion of insight, which I don't know if that was the same kind of connection you had to the Dylan story, because I know that's in the Lehrer book, but that for me was a really interesting moment of connection.
Yeah, no, that's oh yeah. you can't have a better listener than Amy. That's just, yeah, that's right. And she usually does it much, she'll talk about it much better than I did. But the other thing I would say, and this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, is that the context in which I was finishing that movie and the whole talk this week was kind of interesting as I reflect on it. I was doing three things, okay? I was being a subject matter expert because I was finishing up a chapter for a book on Renaissance studies, in which I was examining certain aspects of theories of meaning and metaphor that my own Milton teacher, Wally Kerrigan, had explored in a book called The Sacred Complex on the Psychogenesis of Paradise Lost. People, you cannot get more smee than that. I mean, this is like, rah! So I'm making sense of my own intellectual journey as a Miltonist and trying to get it into 6,500 words, and I'm already past the deadline. So it's like, yee! And I know, oh, and yes, I have this keynote is coming up. So I'm doing that as a scholar of Milton studies, which is all completely irrelevant, right? Because I'm making all these connections. I'm trying to exercise servant leadership as the head of the search committee for the New Media Consortium's new executive director position, and bringing a search committee together, trying to find consensus, but make space for dissent, and then we actually have to get this done, people, because we want to make the interviews in San Francisco in December. So I'm doing that, writing the Milton stuff and making this movie and trying to prepare for an extraordinary opportunity, which I don't take for granted. I mean, my gosh, to stand up in front of people who have inspired me and try to bring something, I mean, okay. And so I'm doing all that at the same time, and it's just, you know, it's like I'm trying to make higher ed happen in my head, like completely, right then. And that was kind of an awesome, hard task to dwell within, but it informed every aspect of the talk yesterday, and the extent to which